swim the deepest sea. I wanna be what I can be, and I will take you there with me. Can you see the dreams I dream? Feel the things I do. Let us reach out to the stars. Scotiabank will take us through. So come on, father, mother, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, and friend, and we can build our dreams together. We will make it in the end with Scotiabank. Yes, come on, father, mother, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, and friend. We've got Jamaica's future on our minds. Jamaica dreams in our hands. With Scotiabank, Jamaican dreams come true.
We at Red Stripe honor our heritage as a Jamaican company, and in 2002, our tradition for excellence received kudos from the JMA, JEA, and the JCC, the most prestigious award being the Governor General's Award for the most outstanding corporate entity. But success doesn't just happen. It takes one team, one vision, one goal, and a drive to innovation. Innovative thinking has led us to commission MAG 5, the fastest bottling line in the Caribbean, and new product and marketing innovations, with Red Stripe Light and the new global sensation Smirnoff Ice being clear winners. Energized by our achievements, Red Stripe continues to make strides, and we're committed to being a part of Jamaica's great future.
What Midas will do for you.
What Midas does for me? I don't carry cash anymore when I do my personal business.
NCB 24-hour banking. Midas.
As a working mother, I love the convenience of using Midas to shop.
Midas is so easy to use.
I even get cash instantly.
From NCB, your bank, your future.
Midas.
Before God and all mankind, I pledge the love and loyalty of my heart, the wisdom and courage of my mind, the strength and vigor of my body. In the service of my fellow citizens, I promise to stand up for justice, brotherhood, and peace, to work diligently and creatively, to think generously and honestly, so that Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship, and prosperity, and play her part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race.
The National Pledge speaks to the attitude required to find the way forward. In Jamaica, we know that ours is a nation of contradictions, talented performers in many spheres, and potential for greatness. Yet it has been argued that our nation, and in particular our economy, do not necessarily reflect this potential. Just 2 weeks ago, Jamaicans watched in awe as the dollar dived to a record low of over 70 Jamaican dollars for $1 US. Jamaica's poor economic performance has left many sectors facing serious difficulties. The government has since been pumping millions of US dollars into the market to shore up the local currency. Currently, the exchange rate fluctuates at around 59 Jamaican dollars to $1 US. 5 years ago, it took just over 37 Jamaican dollars to buy $1 US. The country has also been struggling with limited economic growth, high levels of unemployment and underemployment, declining output in major sectors, and increasing levels of public debt. It's estimated that between 1998 and 2002, only 14,800 jobs were created in the Jamaican economy. At the end of last year, the unemployment rate stood at 15%. Last year, roughly half, about 800,000 of the persons listed as unemployed were under the age of 24. A look at the country's GDP shows an ailing economy. With all that said, there is no doubt that Jamaica's strength lies in its unique people. The nation's wealth is a product of their talent, effort, and expertise. The responsibility is ours to determine the way forward.
Good evening, and thank you for joining our discussion program as we come to you live from the studios of the CPTC. Tonight, we're focusing on economic growth, the way forward. We look at building national teams. No, not the West Indies cricket team, but a team's approach towards building the major sectors of the economy: tourism, exports, agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Over the next 90 minutes, our panel and some well-known visionaries and strategists will offer their own prescriptions on what we need to do to go forward as individuals, firms, and as a nation which is yet to realize its enormous possibilities. Our hope is that you will hear some ideas and suggestions that will help you in your own struggles to improve economic prospects for yourself and your family. Tonight's forum is organized by the National Debates Commission, a project of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce and the Media Association of Jamaica. They are solely responsible for tonight's topic and guests. Our main panel comprises achievers and trailblazers in each of the sectors to be examined. They are, representing tourism, Mr. Paul Pennycook, Director of Tourism. Exporter and manufacturer, Mr. Carl James. Speaking on the issues of agriculture and export, Dr. Marshall Hall. Manufacturer, Anthony Chang. And from the services sector, Mr. Mervyn Eyre and Mrs. Audrey Marks Dunton. And Christopher Tufton, I beg your pardon, representing the Jamaica Labour Party. The People's National Party was also invited to send a representative, but declined the invitation. We also welcome our visionaries and strategists, who will be introduced later, and we also welcome our studio audience. As you saw in the earlier report, the Jamaican economy is, in plain and simple terms, not performing. The big worries are the size and cost of government debt, the gap between what government earns and what it spends, and the cost of keeping the exchange rate stable. On the plus side, there's been fairly strong growth over the last 6 months. This comes after the economy experienced 3 years of modest growth in real GDP up to 2002. Before that, there were 4 years of economic decline. That's the brief background for our discussion. But first, we went to the streets to hear what you have to say about the way forward.
We need to sort of get some community-based projects that is not political, that people will, build their community, That I think that would be a means of sort of improving the community and getting people employed.
It's too much for young people. We are too dependent, we need to be more independent. For instance, when you look at those who are in UTEC and CAS, when they left, instead of they come out to build, they come out to inherit what is already built, and that is a big problem with us.
The government, first and foremost, and the most important thing, needs to understand that in order for people to produce, it must be affordable. For you to get into business, everybody wants to make a profit. Can't afford it, can't do business. Start there, we're gone clear.
There are quite a number of persons outside there that is doing business, informal business, and they are not subject to pay tax. The tax is just being generated within a certain circle. They need to design ways of widening that net.
We need to cut down on the crime rate. That is one of the most important things. And then the men who have the money must learn to invest it with the poorer set of people.
We need honest politicians that really has the country at heart. I think that is lacking. And when we can get politicians that really love the country, then it will make a difference.
There are a lot of agricultural lands that are very idle, not only from the government side, but also from individuals who have lost interest in farming, and it can be utilized.
Every government that comes in, people have to adjust themselves. So it's not a government problem. If our attitude doesn't change, then our country is going to remain in a mess.
Okay, you've had your say. Now we're going to be looking at each of these sectors. But before we get into sector by sector, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to present their own views, their own perceptions as to where they see the major issues, what are the 2 or 3 big ideas that they have in mind for Jamaica as we go forward. I'm going to start with Mr. Paul Pennycook, Director of Tourism.
Thank you, sir. It's one simple, big idea I have, and that is to dramatically increase the growth and arrivals of tourists to the island. And if we do that, we can at least begin to earn our way out of the problems that we have.
Okay, that's a big idea, and we're going to come back to that idea later on. Carl James, you've been in sugar, you've been in export. One big idea or many big ideas?
Well, I'm not sure of many big ideas, but I think that as a small state economy like Jamaica, with a long tradition in agricultural production, with globalization facing us, we now need to change our focus from agriculture to agribusiness, with the emphasis on adding value to whatever we are producing and creating new industries out of commodities.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Dr. Marshall Hall, manufacturer, agriculturalist, farmer, former academician. What is this policy framework that Carl James talks about that we need to get right to get the vision going?
I mean, I would have to endorse what Carl said about agriculture and the commodities, but I would like to take a slightly different tack. If we look at the broad sweep from 1970 to the present, and we ask what has been the one area of consistent success, a little bit of research suggests that it turns out to be remittances. And if that's true, we need to ask ourselves, if that has been consistent, perhaps with no government support, or maybe with government support in that people left, maybe that's an area that we need to look at it slightly differently and make it into an industry. Ask ourselves, can we train people, nurses, teachers, service people? Tremendous possibility.
Train people for export and bring back the cash?
Yes. Train people to go into this borderless world. I wouldn't use the word export.
All right, come back to that. Anthony Chang, yes, sir. What is your vision for the country and how you're going to make it happen?
I'd just like to add that as you move forward, I think what is important is that we continually build trust and confidence throughout society, not just within one sector of society, throughout society. I think that's very important. I think we always have to ensure that micro and macroeconomic policies are always in sync. Thank you.
Okay, and Mervyn here?
My idea is to actually find a way to have the great ideas of the people out there to actually translate into some value. I think that we have an overdose of economic analysis. I think we are caught in a cause and effect scenario. I think we're focusing too much on effect, and we need to start focusing on cause. Simplify it. There's a lot of confused people out there who have great ideas. In the ICT sector, the technology sector, there's a huge responsibility. And by the way, we need to somehow remove that or change that from being a sector that is seen to be a luxury to one of an essential sector, one that is focused on delivering efficiency and adding value.
Mm-hmm. Audrey Marks, you have been talking recently about building partnerships between government, private sector, and unions, and building a sense of trust. Is that the big idea? And why don't we have this sense of trust in Jamaica? Everybody's talking about the lack of trust.
I don't think we have ever really made a determined and focused effort to get all the parties around the table working together. We started in 1996 with the National Industrial Policy, but was left mostly to the government to set the targets and to carry out those targets. After the election, I think we had the Vale Royal Summit. It started, and there are 2 disagreements, and it stopped. So we can't leave the process to just the politicians. The private sector, the union, all the stakeholders have to get involved. And I was speaking because recently I'd seen where Ireland was in the same position as Jamaica, in fact worse. And they got together, they decided that their country had to be first. And the theme of what I'm saying is put Jamaica first. Let us get together and work on a plan. Because the only thing that is going to save us now is for us to all commit to working on those plans, because to make change will require some amount of difficult economic realities. And so everybody have to commit that they'll work through those realities.
Christopher Tufton, you have the last word on this part of the program.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to add to what Tony and Audrey said earlier. The issue of trust and confidence is absolutely critical. And we have seen signs of a lack of trust and lack of confidence in the framework in which we need to grow an economy. I mean, an economy depends on investment. There is no other way. And I think, yes, we are in a globalized world where the state, in one sense, is losing the type of authority and influence that it once had. But I believe absolutely critical, the state has to demonstrate the type of leadership, articulate the type of vision that is necessary to stimulate investment. And I believe, unfortunately, certainly over the last decade or more, the state has not demonstrated that vision and leadership. One case of that is the fact that the state continues to consume a lot more than it actually earns. And this, I believe, has brought us and is bringing us in a situation where people are fearful. And until we address that, until we lead by example, beginning with the state, we are going to face challenges that are going to be very difficult to overcome.
Okay. We're going to go on to tourism, but before we do that, I want to go back a little bit to this question of trust, which has been raised by a number of persons, and refer to a study which was done recently as part of the Jamaica Cluster Competitiveness Project. That is the project to bring, I think it's a PSOJ project, or the JEA, Export Association project, to bring together the clusters of the economy, agribusiness, tourism and entertainment as the three areas with possibilities. But part of that study looked at this whole question of trust and came to the conclusion that trust is lacking, particularly between government and the private sector. And the numbers are telling. I mean, that most of the people in the private sector believe that, in general, government officials do not know what is best for Jamaica, as the study found. And presumably, the government feels that they know what is best for Jamaica. So we have this lack of trust, which is evident in any of the dialogues with the private sector people. So what it is that we need to do, Tony Chang, besides talking about the fact that we don't have this trust, what is it that we need to do to make it happen?
I think the first thing is, obviously, you have to accept that there is a problem. You can't solve the problem if you don't accept there's a problem. So first you have to accept that there is a problem. After you accept that, then you move on to building what I call solution environments, solution processes. I mean, for instance, it would be wise, for instance, if we could follow models that other countries have used, for instance, when they generate their budget. There are countries that have set pre-budget consultative periods and process between public, private sector, and other stakeholders, so that when the budget comes out, there is a high degree of consensus.
Okay, but we've gone through that process in Jamaica to some extent.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, somebody decides.
Yes.
You go through the process, you consult, you ask, and the government decides, and somebody says, that's not what we want, and I'm not playing in this league.
Mm-hmm. The point is, I mean, I think you're trying to say, well, it really refers to commitment. If you recognize that there's a significant problem, and the way forward is that, I mean, okay, let's bring it back to your home life. I mean, if you're living at home, I mean, and you want a productive home life, and you have a disagreement with your wife, I mean, it's pretty hard to have a very productive home life.
True.
And the base of any economy is to increase productivity. That's to increase wealth. That's to increase the the welfare of the people. And it's pretty hard to have increased productivity if there's no trust between the players in the economy. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the first of the 5 sectors we're going to talk about, tourism. And tourism, as we have already stated, is one of the main income earners. Indeed, tourism, along with agribusiness, entertainment, and tourism, entertainment, and agribusiness have been identified as the best prospects for competing in the world economy. So we're going to discuss tourism. Mr. Pennycook, an editorial recently in the Jamaican Observer said that to move tourism forward, the government should bring the players into a room, ask them what they want, and give them more than what they ask for. Is that the way forward? Is that the answer?
I don't think so, no.
What is the
If you simply say, bring the players into a room, ask them what they want, give it to them, that will solve the problem. You have to be prepared for every player wanting something different. And I don't quite understand how you would be able then to satisfy everybody's need if you have this multiplicity of needs. The fact is, we need to have an environment so that the players in the industry can be successful in the business. What I mean by that is they must have an environment within which they can compete with their neighbors. It has to be such that if you operate a hotel, if you have a rent-a-car company or operate an attraction, it must be in an environment where you make a profit. At the same time, there are other things that can be done, such as the violence in the country creates a perception that it's unsafe to come to Jamaica, and so we have to deal with that in terms of, one, decreasing the violence, and two, changing that perception abroad to ensure that even more people will come because it will seem safer to come to Jamaica.
Okay. Before we have a general discussion on this, though, I think I'd like to go back and ask Master Control to run a tape of a report that was done on how people feel about the tourism sector and, in fact, the contribution of tourism to the economy. Okay. Bobby Stevens, you're a former director of tourism, and you're still, I think, a director of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association. And some time ago, you had a very big idea to get Port Royal as a major attraction. First of all, what's happened to the idea? If somebody could pass your microphone, if you could, what's happened to the idea, and what are the 2 or 3 things that you see at this point as essential to moving tourism forward?
I think we have to begin with the customer. The customer is demanding a greater experience. They want to have a lot more cultural environs surrounding them. They want to go to the people. They want to taste the food. They want to hear the music. They want to participate in the things that we take for granted in Jamaica, but they consider as exotic, as different. And I think that we really need to begin to focus a lot more attention on getting projects like a Port Royal out of the back burner stage and onto the front burner, and begin to involve the communities and make them be the major beneficiaries as well as participants in the tourism sector. The whole idea of Port Royal was not just to develop a heritage site, but also to develop it as a cruise ship port of call and to ensure that the history and the culture of the people of Port Royal, and of course of all of Jamaica, including the rest of the historic triangle, were presented to visitors in an exciting and very attractive fashion. I still believe in a dream. I think it is something which needs to be put back on the front burner. And I think that we need to begin to have confidence in ourselves to be able to implement it. Too long we have been waiting on somebody from overseas to come and do it for us. We need to do it ourselves.
So why didn't it happen in the first place?
Well, I think we went into the marketplace at a time when there was a very serious activity in Kingston that took place, and it kind of dampened spirits. And then right after that came 9/11. But it's now 2003. We need to get back in the marketplace and get the project funded, and I believe we can.
Dennis Morrison, you are chairman of the Tourist Board. What is the vision of the board on the two issues that have been mentioned, some of the issues that have been mentioned, but in particular the issue of heritage and community tourism involving the people in the product, and also the linkage between tourism and our own entertainment and cultural industries?
Claude, the fact of the matter is that over the last 20 years, we have made significant progress in convincing foreigners to eat Jamaican food. As Bobby said, people who travel these days want to enjoy the culture and the food of the places they visit. Significant progress has been made in that regard in the last 20 years. What we need to do now, and some of that has begun, is to put in place the physical infrastructure that would make it possible for us to develop attractions that would provide the sort of environment in which the modern day visitor is expecting to see different aspects of a country's heritage.
Is that a resource issue? The investment into new attractions?
Yes, it is a resource issue, but I think that the legislative and other frameworks have been put in place now that facilitates more rapid development in that regard. And recently, the government approved incentives for attractions, which is something that we have not had, in spite of the fact that over the last 50 years or so, there have been incentives for building hotels. So I think there's significant movement in that direction. However, the problem of crime and violence, which is something that affects particularly a project like Port Royal, is something that we have to make progress on. And while the state, through the Ministry of National Security, and the various stakeholders in the society must cooperate in that regard, the fight against crime, it is important that from the point of view of the Jamaica Tourist Board, that we put the resources into public relations and advertising to convince the international audience that we are making progress in that direction. Jamaica has a very strong brand name, one of the strongest of all brands. Our difficulty is that we have not been able to convert that brand awareness into actual business because of the poor public relations of the country and the image problem that we have. So I think in those two respects, significant future action is required to build the tourism industry to the point where it can be the main driver, as Paul Pennycook indicated.
Yeah. Paul, there have been criticism of the all-inclusives concept because people are locked up in hotels and they do not get to integrate with the community. And all of the other things that we talk about, linkages with the culture and the community, are more difficult if tourists end up only sitting in their own hotels and on the beach.
That, unfortunately, is a misperception or a misconception. The fact is that just about every all-inclusive hotel that I know has, one, a tour desk in their lobby where they sell tours to go out to attractions that was mentioned by a couple of speakers earlier on. Number two, there are some all-inclusives that actually include tours of the property, and not just tours to attractions, but tours to simple things like shopping in the nearest town. And so there is significant movement to actually have the clients go outside of the all-inclusive and experience the country. And so that is really a misconception that they're sort of locked up in four walls.
Marshall Hall, can I ask a question linking back to agriculture? Is it your perception or the facts, what as you understand them, how much of what we grow and produce in Jamaica is consumed in the hotels, and is the agricultural sector happy with that? Or is there room for improvement, and how can you make that improvement possible?
There obviously is room for improvement, but before we get to that, to that question, I think it's important to note that a failure of agriculture in a rural community, it almost guarantees a failure of tourism. Because if agriculture disappears from St. Mary, you're talking about a mass of people who are unemployed, and the whole question of tourism harassment raises its head. So I think agriculture and tourism are intertwined. There's no question, however, that the Jamaican tourist product uses a lot of Jamaican foods. We feel they can do more. If I give you just a small comment, to serve a slice of papaw, a little thin slice, nobody should be allowed to eat a papaw like that. And I've been begging the guys in the tourist sector, give the guys a good slice of tourism, of papaw, but no luck.
No luck. All right, one last comment, Paul, before we take the break.
You know, the statistics show that we retain approximately 63 cents out of the dollar for tourism expenditure in this country, and a significant portion of that goes into agriculture. The other thing I should mention is that gone are the days when just about all the food, the meats in particular, are imported. The hotel sector now uses primarily local meats, and all the fruits and vegetables are local.
All right. I'm afraid we have to end this part of the discussion at this point. Coming up in our next segment, we'll take a look at manufacturing sector, and we'll seek answers to whether it's time for Jamaica to concentrate on new areas of manufacturing. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
I wanna climb the highest mountain, swim the deepest sea. I wanna be what I can be, and I will take you there with me. Can you see the dreams I dream? Feel the things I do. Let us reach out to the stars. Scotiabank will take us through. So come on, father, mother, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, and friend, and we can build our dreams together. We will make it in the end with Scotiabank. Yes, come on, father, mother, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, and friend. We've got Jamaica's future on our minds, Jamaican dreams in our hands. With Scotiabank, Jamaican dreams come true.
We at Red Stripe honor our heritage as a Jamaican company, and in 2002, our tradition for excellence received kudos from the JMA, JEA, and the JCC, the most prestigious award being the Governor General's Award for the most outstanding corporate entity. But success doesn't just happen. It takes one team, one vision, one goal, and a drive to innovation. Innovative thinking has led us to commission MAG 5, the fastest bottling line in the Caribbean, and new product and marketing innovations, with Red Stripe Light and the new global sensation Smirnoff Ice being clear winners. Energized by our achievements, Red Stripe continues to make strides, and we're committed to being a part of Jamaica's great future.
It's 10 minutes past midnight, and she's paying her utility and cable bills. Telemidas, telephone banking anytime, anywhere, for people who need more time. Telemidas from National Commercial Bank.
An embattled manufacturing sector showed signs of strain as their president, Clarence Clark, resigned following reports of dissension in the ranks over the imposition of government's new fee structures. It was a culmination of nearly a decade in which the Jamaican manufacturing sector felt the squeeze of a harsh economic climate. Cheap imports of all kinds provided stiff competition for Jamaicans trying to keep the failing industry and their businesses alive. Manufacturers saw a ray of hope in 2000 and 2001 when the sector grew slightly by 0.9% in 2000 and 0.6% in 2002. But this was after 7 years of economic decline. Experts say the year of growth was due mainly to increased output in 3 areas: processed foods, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, and petroleum refining. This glimmer of hope was short-lived, as the sector was in decline again the very next year, slipping marginally by 0.2%. There was growth in some areas of manufacturing. The output of alcohol increased by 2.3%, and that of cigarettes grew by 2.5%. Carbonated beverages had a slight increase, and the production of stout declined by 2.1% in 2002. Output of most commodities in the chemicals and chemical products categories declined in 2002 when compared to the previous year. But the output of most businesses producing petroleum products increased in 2002. Cement production was up in 2002. This was the 3rd consecutive year of positive growth in cement production. Looking at the bigger picture, the manufacturing sector has contributed 12.4% to total production, or GDP, in 2002. That's 13.4% less than it contributed in 1998. The manufacturing sector was not able to provide more job opportunities for Jamaicans. Reports are that last year, a total of 100 jobs were created in the manufacturing sector. In the 5-year period under review, the contracting sector has seen 24,900 job losses. So how do we change the trends? What are the answers to the hard questions being asked by manufacturers? How do we find the way forward?
Overall then, there's been a steady decline in this sector since 1995. However, things started to improve in 2001, but again reversed in 2002. Anthony Chang, you are the representative of the manufacturing sector. How do you reverse the trend? Are we manufacturing the right things? Should we get out of manufacturing? Should we be manufacturing other things than we're doing? What is the answer to the problems?
Let me just say, I think in spite of all the problems in manufacturing, there are sparks of hope in the manufacturing sector. And clearly, if you look at some firms that continue to manufacture products which are marketable and also profitable for them, I think there are sparks of hope.
Like what firms?
Well, I mean, frankly, look, one of your sponsors, Red Stripe, is a manufacturer. Okay. They have, and if you look at that firm, it shows clearly some of the key ingredients for success in this new environment. They have a strong brand and they produce efficiently. But I think what's key to the manufacturing now, when we look at the way forward, is to be cognizant of the environment in which we operate. We have to be cognizant of all the trade agreements we have, the trade arrangement, which has impacted on the manufacturing sector. I think that has to be a key component as we think about the way forward in the manufacturing sector. And I think we have a good person here, Dr. Rosalie Hamilton, who can probably give us some ideas on that.
Dr. Hamilton, how are the trade agreements affecting us in manufacturing? Have we signed away our birthright? We've signed agreements that we should not have signed, or were we forced into them?
The agreements have made the environment in which manufacturers trade much more difficult for a variety of reasons. I think to look at the scope of the agreements, they're not just multilateral agreements that are part of the WTO arrangement, the World Trade Organization, but they're also now hemispheric regional arrangements like the Free Trade Area of the Americas, as well as new rules on a single market and economy, the CARICOM single market and economy. And all of these have implications for trade. And the major message out of all of these agreements is market access, opening of markets to the economies in the world. And what it means is that it's not only more difficult for manufacturers to send their products into foreign countries, but even to sell them locally. As other firms come into our market, it makes it much more difficult. Then there are the rules that speak to things like the standards, the way the goods are made. Issues like even core labor standards are increasingly becoming part of the debate. Environmental factors, there are a whole range of issues that manufacturers now must comply with in order to trade. An important dimension of the new trade environment we have now since 1995 with the establishment of the World Trade Organization is that we're now in a world where if we don't comply with these rules, we can face trade sanctions. And these trade sanctions could mean penalties for the country. It could mean we have to pay higher duty on certain commodities and so on. So that the environment for trade is getting increasingly tough. The trade figures speak to the fact that we have lowered our barriers to trade. We have reduced a lot of custom duties that in fact protected the manufacturing sector for a long time in Jamaica. So they're now facing the full brunt in many ways of competition. And I should also say that it is only going to get tougher as we enter into these arrangements that we're currently negotiating.
Yes. Wayne Chen, you are the managing director of a large chain of supermarkets, Superplus Stores. And as such, I imagine that you're mostly into merchandising. Are you in manufacturing? Can people like yourselves get into manufacturing, and what's keeping you out of manufacturing?
Well, we are retailers. We do sell a lot of commodities, but there's a myth in the retail trade that the supermarkets are full of foreign goods. The fact is that over 60% of dollar value of goods that we sell in our supermarkets are Jamaican goods. It might not occur to a lot of people seeing the number of foreign items on the shelf.
Can you say that percentage again, Wayne?
Over 60% in dollar value of what we sell through Superplus's 28 outlets.
How much of that is fresh produce and how much of that is processed?
It's about an 80-20 mix, fresh and processed. But when you consider, for argument's sake, you're talking about Red Stripe, you're talking about Appleton, Rare Nephew, you talk about Grace Candy, recently getting the contract to manufacture Capri Sun. You're talking about virtually all the carbonated beverages. You're talking about many, many products. Jamaica broilers. You're talking Caribbean broilers. You're talking National Continental. You're talking successful Jamaican firms still thriving and expanding, even in a difficult economy.
Can I, Krista, I know
and to go
I'm
further,
going to come back to you, but
we do have our branded line of products. We use contract manufacturers. I think all but 2 of the 60 products that we sell are Jamaican products.
Yeah. Christopher, you've been trying to say something
yes,
for a while.
Well, it applies to tourism as it does to manufacturing. I believe that while I listen and understand that there are a lot of positives, I think there is so much more that we can do. I mean, in aggregate, when we put everything together, the fact is that we are just not achieving the levels of growth and through investment that we need to. Take the issue of the free trade, and it comes back, I believe, to a vision and a strategic plan to implement and achieve that particular vision. Take the manufacturing sector as an example and the free trade area. You're talking about in a couple of years, a market region of 800 million people, the largest region in the world, single market region, a combined income of about 13 trillion or so dollars, okay? With tremendous opportunities to access markets, but it's rules-based. So one, people need to be informed. What is the role of the state as the leadership of this process? I don't think that we're doing enough. Secondly, how does the state reconcile the need to achieve competitiveness in manufacturing when they pursue policies such as assess, which might be which is present in Jamaica but not necessarily present in Trinidad or Barbados, when you have taxes on raw material and capital goods? I mean, to my mind, it is a contradiction. And we have to decide exactly what it is that we want to achieve. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound as the prophet of gloom and doom here this evening. But the fact is that if we don't face the realities, if we don't move beyond the symptoms and look at the real problem, which is we are going to be faced with competition. We can achieve a lot. We are a talented people, but we have to get the basics right. And the framework is off target.
I'm Tony Chang. Christopher Tufton says that you're wrong.
No, I don't think I think you're a good moderator. You're trying to spark some controversy here. No, but let me just say that I just want to allude to something I said at opening remarks, that we need to get the micro and macro together. If you look down what's happening in the firm and industrial level, especially the small to medium-sized firms, manufacturing sector, I think there's a lot of pain in that side. You have access to capital is a big issue. I mean, for you to retool, for you to re-engineer new products, capital is a big issue. Things like product development is a key issue. If you're going to meet the challenges of open trade environment, more liberalized trade environment, you have to come with new products. So obviously product development is a key component of that. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you want to get that sector going, especially the vulnerable side of that sector, you need to look at some of the key things that are going to drive them along within the firm industrial levels. Access to capital, and I can give you some solutions for that. One, probably open up, a favorite topic, make equity capital cheaper by hopefully giving us some breaks on dividends. But the point is that if you don't have capital,
some more breaks.
I mean, one of the things that we have listed companies who have access to and nothing wrong with that. We support that. I support that. Where there is a tax break on dividends, so therefore there's an incentive to buy shares in a company. Why don't we try to extend that to non-listed companies?
Or alternatively, why don't unlisted companies become listed?
That's true, but they have to reach a certain state before they get listed. You have to prepare yourself to be listed. So give us the opportunity to prepare ourselves to be listed.
Dunson Whittingham, you've been trying to say something for a while. Let me.
I think one of the basic problems, because we are involved in bringing in more import rather than in terms of the service industry. But one of the problems I think the manufacturing industry face is basically in this country you don't have a commercial free zone and you don't have a manufacturing free zone. In Panama, when you go into Panama to buy commercial goods, on the other side there's a manufacturing free zone. Goods are gear manufactured for export. We labor too long talking about specialization of certain goods which is gear for export. And I think it's time for the manufacturing sector, because when Gilbert strike here, you find out why Trinidad is ahead of us, because most of the industry here is not up to standard in terms of gearing for real export. This is why you find certain products which used to manufacture here, it is easier to import them and sell them in the country, paying any amount of duty, paying any amount of tariff and so forth. And we have to face the reality that the time is getting narrower and narrower, as Dr. Hamilton have said, because if we think we're gonna close the Jamaican economy with a Berlin Wall around it, it's gonna be teared down because this global vision is getting more small and smaller. And what the manufacturing sector need to do is to set up a manufacturing free zone. Dressmaker, you have tailors, who can we're still surviving in this country by making standardized shoes, and they need to place in an environment where they can make things only for export. And I think it's time, if you look what D&G have done in a short time in terms of revolutionizing its industry, that is an example. If you look at what Enkel have done, that's an example. If you look at what Carreras have done, that's an example. And we have to face the reality that some goods which are manufacturing in this country need to dump. You don't need to manufacture them anymore because they have no taste, they have no style, they are not dancing to the Jamaican rhythm. And we all have to meet that reality. And it's time for us, you understand, to shut up, manufacture, and put out. Because if we don't do that, very soon, as Dr. Hamilton have said, we're going to pay for what we're not to pay for. And it's time to understand that the Jamaican economy will survive only if we can set up a proper commercial free zone and a proper manufacturing free zone where we work in abundance on either side.
Yeah, but what I hear you saying is that you believe that there are skilled people in Jamaica who can manufacture quality goods for export. Is that the perception of the Small Business Association, and where are these people and how are we going to get them together?
One of the things that we have to take in consideration is the fact that when you look at the trade agreements, most of the small and micro business people really don't understand what is happening. And I really do believe that the state must do more in trying to educate this sector, especially at the lower level, so that they can understand how these agreements will impact largely on their businesses. We also have to understand, as small and micro business people, the importance of coming together, of merging our businesses so we can be more competitive. Because if we don't come together as small and micro business people, then we're going to hang separately. So it's very, very important that we pool our resources together and, so that we can operate like large businesses.
And hang together.
Won't hang together.
All right. I'm afraid we have to bring this part of the discussion to a close. Our performance, in fact, in the manufacturing sector can be related to agriculture because many of the items from the sector form the base of, and in fact are components of manufactured goods, which then become processed goods for domestic as well as for domestic consumption and for export. Now we're going to take a look at background and agriculture, and then when we come back, we'll have a discussion in studio on the state of agriculture.
For centuries, thousands of Jamaicans have been dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. The plan was simple: produce large amounts of a few crops, sell them abroad, and use the foreign exchange to buy imported goods. But things and times have changed. They've not been so good recently. In the past 5 years, there has been a 16% decline in total agriculture. Production of crops grown for local consumption has fallen by 29%, while the export of agricultural produce fell by 9.7%. Both farmers with small plots and those with large acreages continue to produce their crops even though they wonder daily about their markets at home and abroad. In real terms, the agricultural sector has seen declines in both domestic production and export. Shrinking markets are not the only concerns of the industry. Agriculture, forestry, and fishing have all been seriously affected by acts of God. Jamaica has been widely acclaimed for the quality of its main exports: bananas, citrus, pimento, cocoa, and coffee. But in the last 5 years, production of these have fallen off because of international market trends. This, added to our own economic challenges, has meant bad news for the agricultural sector. Bananas used to be called green gold, but now banana production has declined by nearly 20,000 tons. Where we once earned $33 million from bananas in 1998, we earned $14 million in 2002. The world-acclaimed Blue Mountain coffee went against the downward trend. There was a significant increase in output between 1998 and 2002. During that period, earnings from coffee almost doubled. The decline in production did not only affect products grown to be sent abroad. The production of crops grown to be sold right here in Jamaica has fallen off. Over the past 5 years, fewer persons have been able to depend on agriculture for employment. The sector lost nearly 18,000 jobs between 1998 and 2002, with 5,600 being lost in 2002 alone. It is safe to say that the traditional forms of agriculture as we know them may need to be rethought. Given the general downward trends, new strategies, new markets, new innovative and indigenous products need to be developed as we seek to determine the way forward.
Dr. Marshall Hall, new products, new crops, get out of sugar, get out of bananas.
No, I don't share that view. I share the view about new crops, but I think first of all, we need to set the stage for agriculture. Agriculture is now a changed world. The world is looking for user-friendly commodities, user-friendly products, healthier foods. There's a demand for something exotic. It's looking for attractive packaging. Unfortunately, when we look at our history in agriculture, we have grown up with a degree of protection, or a degree of protection, even if it wasn't state-imposed, the notion that our products were tastier have led us sometimes to believe that we were invincible and we could keep on increasing the price. So the stage is set for significant growth in agriculture. What are some of the problems? You know, I think efficiency at the end of the day is what it's all about. We ask the state to still set the environment, and if we just, there's no information base in Jamaica. So if we ask what by crop, what is produced, where is it produced, when is it produced, what are the costs of production, how do those costs of production by crop compare with the best in the world? Can a farmer routinely know that he can benchmark what he is doing against the best in the world? So what I'm saying is that we need to get the state doing certain simple things. And one very important thing is the provision of an information base. That's vital for agribusiness. That's vital to stop overproduction when it rains and then the crops are flooded and prices fall. You asked about sugar and bananas. Sugar and bananas are, in one sense, their time has passed. Passed not in the sense that they should go away, but passed in the sense that how we did it yesterday, we can no longer do it today. And if I talk narrowly about bananas for a moment, the company I work for, we have achieved ISO 14001 approval in bananas. And that tells us that how we handle our chemicals, how we handle our irrigation, how we handle our workforce, we can bring the most demanding supermarkets in the world to our farms and they're satisfied that we're doing things right. We can do it because after all, it is sun, it is rainfall, it is manpower, and it is inputs. When we look at sugar, there are pieces of sugar that are doing very well. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves whether we need to shrink the industry as we have done in bananas and concentrate. But I'll let Carl deal with that. But there are things like, you know, we have had a tradition here in Jamaica of agriculture means sugar, bananas. Agribusiness means the manufacturing side. But when we talk about producing for the local market, we speak, it's almost that's a peasant farming, and that's only poor people do that. And that's a wrong business. Education is so vital. If I tell you that on our farms we have had to introduce a literacy program for some 500 employees, that's serious, because how do you transform your industry when you have that? So I am very bullish about the future of agriculture, but not agriculture of yesterday. And we can do it.
Carl,
we can transform.
What about sugar? Can that be transformed, or is it too late for sugar?
That can be transformed. Part of the problem we've had is that sugar industry was established, as many of us know, to produce raw material for UK. This has continued, and Marshall is quite right. That kind of format has changed. You need now to get to where you are doing value added, and people are finding other streams. There's a thing called cogeneration. There is renewable energy. It comes from sugar. But we haven't gotten there because we have been just playing around on the surface by each year you provide your quota to Europe and to the United States. You get a price. But one of the things that we have not done in recent years is manufacturing, is refining sugar. It's the first step in value added. Other industries have now come up with specialized products that you get from sugar.
But we haven't done those things because why? They have not been profitable?
Because we do not have somebody driving it. Somebody has to drive it.
But Jamaica is not short of drivers.
Well,
probably vehicles.
They're driving the right way. But somebody has to drive along that line. There's no shortage of recommendation and even citing where there are people who are doing it.
Bob, you wanted to make one quick comment? Very quickly.
I think there needs to be just a vision linking agriculture with manufacturing, where we focus on gourmet products, we focus on value added. We, instead of focusing on sugar, focus on confectionery, focus on the spices, the various things that we do well, the flavors we have, and get those to end products and go out to market and begin to really market them.
Okay. I'm afraid we'll run out of time for this segment. In our next segment, we're going to look at export and services sectors, and we'll also offer some prescriptions for our ailing economy. We'll be right back.
I want to climb the highest mountain, swim the deepest sea. I want to be what I can be, and I will take you there with me. Can you see the dreams I dream? Feel the things I do. Let us reach out to the stars. Scotiabank will take us through. So come on, father, mother, sister.
We at Red Stripe honor our heritage as a Jamaican company, and in 2002, our tradition for excellence received kudos from the JMA, JEA, and the JCC, the most prestigious award being the Governor General's Award for the most outstanding corporate entity. But success doesn't just happen. It takes one team, one vision, one goal, and a drive to innovation. Innovative thinking has led us to commission MAG 5, the fastest bottling line in the Caribbean, and new product and marketing innovations, with Red Stripe Light and the new global sensation Smirnoff Ice being clear winners. Energized by our achievements, Red Stripe continues to make strides, and we're committed to being a part of Jamaica's great future.
What Midas will do for you.
What Midas does for me? I don't carry cash anymore when I do my personal business.
NCB 24-hour banking. Midas.
As a working mother, I love the convenience of using Midas to shop.
Midas is so easy to use.
I even get cash instantly.
From NCB, your bank, your future.
Midas.
As we look at building teams, we must examine ways to increase the intake of foreign exchange. Simply put, we must find products and services needed in the world market and sell them. Traditional exports are down and have been for over 5 years. Last year, total Jamaican exports decreased by 12.6%. Even in the prized alumina sector, exports have fallen short, due in part to last year's flood rains, mechanical problems at one of the local plants, and falling international prices of alumina. Apparel, once the largest non-traditional foreign exchange earner, has seen 5 consecutive years of decline. This has resulted from losses of market share in the US and uncompetitive costs of production in Jamaica. This led apparel manufacturers to reduce their operations here or take them outside of Jamaica. Although total agricultural exports, mainly coffee and pimento, showed a slight increase in 2002, there were significant reductions in citrus and cocoa exports. Total manufacturing exports increased marginally, mainly due to increases in rum and coffee product exports. In 2002, non-traditional exports fell off too, by 18% when compared to 2001. So, are we watching the trends? Are there new and innovative products we can develop for export? Should it be products at all? What about a serious look at exporting talent and services? All issues to be examined as we find out the route, the way forward.
Welcome back. In this segment of the program, we're going to be continuing the discussion that we left off with agriculture, because Magister, before we took the break, I know you wanted to make a comment, particularly agriculture, rural development, and tourism. And you as somebody who has been in that field in rural Jamaica for some time, what are we missing in getting those 3 elements together, rural development, agriculture, and tourism?
I think what we are missing most of all is a clear policy, a clear agricultural policy, and how that policy is linked with the overall economic policy and especially the food policy of the country. One of the things that I think we need to decide is who is going to feed us, whether we're going to feed our people with imports or we're going to feed our people with local production. And the same thing goes with what is going to drive our export industries, whether we're going to have manufacturing industries using raw material produced locally or based on imported inputs. So the foundation of everything is to come up with a sort of clear agricultural policy, whether we're talking about manufacturing, exports, or domestic production to feed ourselves.
Well, what is the answer to your own question?
The answer to my own question is that we need a policy that puts some priorities. Okay. The elements of the policy is to identify some areas where we can, some key areas, especially in terms of domestic production. If we look at milk, for example, although we are in a situation now in the dairy industry where there's a lot of surplus milk in the world, there's going to come a time, given the existing international agreements, when export subsidies will be removed from dairy products and milk prices will go up significantly. And at that time, it will be very difficult to start building back a dairy industry. So now is the time when everything is almost at square one for us to look at some key industries. Even sugar, we talk about sugar, we talk about bananas. Both of those sectors have important domestic markets, and we have to look at how we can start rebuilding these industries and attracting educated people into it.
Yes. Paco Kennedy.
Yeah, I think that we're looking at the wrong end. We're looking at what we can produce, and we're not looking at what the market wants, and what does the export market want, and are we producing? Today, Grace County had its annual general meeting. Year to date, our export of food products are up 20% over last year. And based on forward bookings that we have for between now and the end of the year, our exports will be double what they were in 2001, as we'll be shipping out about 100 container loads of food a month. Now, all the increase has come from products that we weren't manufacturing 5 years ago. We went into the marketplace, we saw what was required, and went and produced the products in the market wanted. And it comes back, I think, to Carl's point and to Marshall Hall's point. We have got to stop looking at what we produce, and we've got to look at what the market wants.
Okay.
And start producing that.
Okay. Wayne Chen, I think you've been trying to.
I just want to add to what Paco Kennedy has just said. At our end of the marketplace, where we see several 100,000 customers on a monthly basis, we find that there is a marked preference for Jamaican products, for Jamaican agricultural products, for Jamaican manufactured products. And the few companies that have really gotten the formula right have been doing very, very well, Grace Kelly included. And we see world-class brands of bottled water, and yet you will see a Catherine speak with very little advertising, or Wisinko has now the water, which is now the #1 bottled water in Jamaica, underselling anything, any import. So we have people who are getting it right. I think more long-term, what I would like to see, though, is a vision, a national vision, tying all of these various discrete sectors together, and I don't hear us talking about that tonight.
Okay.
And secondly,
can I ask Rosalie Hamilton to address that vision on the way, because we're running out of time, and I know this is an issue that she has been addressing for some time.
Right. I think the question of what we've been doing in the past, and a lot has been said about the reliance of these traditional exports. The challenge now, as we try to compete in the modern world, very generically across all products, goods and services, is really to ask the question, what can we produce in response to the market, but also I would suggest in terms of influencing and shaping the market. We brought new products, for example, in the form of music to the market. Didn't exist, but so there's a sense in which we have to respond through creative mechanisms. I think the fact that we are small and the fact that we have a range of limitation means that there's one important variable that we can't compete on, which is price. And there's a major constraint because, quite frankly, in the area of agriculture, there are some islands in the Caribbean that is smaller than some farms in the world. That's the reality. So that we do have a scale problem. So we have to look at value-added things. We have to look at areas where we can be creative, where we can design things, and so on. Therein lies, I think, the opportunity. What it means for us as a country is the extent to which we can transform the productive base of the economy from the traditional focus of these sectors that we rely on them when, for example, prices internationally are high, we do well. So when sugar prices are high, when bauxite prices are high, we do well. And in fact, it's those externally determined factors that influence how well we do in the country. The extent to which we can transform that focus to one in which we are the major players. What we do, our intellectual capital, what it is that we can create becomes the key variable. If we transform the economy so that those are the major products that we're putting on the market, I think it will address much of the problems.
Okay, we have to go now into the final segment of the program, and in that segment, we're going to look at some of these specific things that we can do. But before we start that discussion, let's review what's been happening in the services sector.
Vibrant, exciting, and growing for the most part, the service sector provides reason for optimism. This sector includes communication, electricity and water, transport, storage and distribution, finance and insurance, real estate, government services, and hotels, restaurants, and clubs. Together, these areas of service contribute about 66% annually to Jamaica's economy. In 2002, this figure was 68.6% of total GDP. With a revived entrepreneurial spirit came new businesses offering a variety of linkage services. The sector created 46,100 jobs, with 13,500 of those being created last year. Most areas have grown. Last year, the production and sale of electricity increased, but water production decreased. Transport, storage, and communication also grew. Consumers bought more pharmaceutical items, hardware and building supplies, transport and machinery equipment too. This led to a growth in imports and increased activities in the distribution sector. This has been especially true of the imports of motor cars and cellular phones and accessories. Banks and other financial institutions have been on the rebound, with regional and international investment, new brands emerging, and increases in the income-earning activity. The entertainment industry made $232.9 million Jamaican dollars last year. There was increased live entertainment, and this positively affected the bottom line. In 1 year, earnings from the film industry increased from $185 million to $548 million. Should the trends continue, the provision of services may be the desired area of concentration to kickstart economic growth. How do we make this reality as we seek the way forward?
Mervyn Eyre, one of the areas of the service economy which has been stated for that has tremendous potential is the information technology sector, notwithstanding some major disasters in that area. But it's from where you sit, what are some of the things that we need to be doing that we're not doing now to get that sector really moving?
First of all, no disrespect to my colleagues, but the services sector is a hot sector.
It's hot?
Yes,
Okay.
It's a hot sector. And I say that, and on a serious note, I think that the future of Jamaica will be based, in my opinion, on our ability to generate high-value services in the global economy. And the global economy is a technology-based economy. I am concerned that sufficient real focus and attention and investment is not being put in the technology sector from both perspective of use and in terms of wealth creation. There is a lot of talk, and by the way, do not be disencouraged by failures, because in fact the whole industry is characterized by overestimation of what can be achieved immediately, but it's also characterized by an underestimation of the long-term consequences. That is a learning experience. I think my big concern is that what we're doing generally, and this is for enterprise as well, is that we are waiting and watching to see how technology affects us, when what we should be doing is taking a decision to see what we want it to do for us. What market do we want to go and be in? In the technology space, how are we going to develop our people to become the best workforce in the region to serve that market, a high-value market? And I think that the whole business of the technology, the responsibility of the technology market as well, in the facilitation of efficiencies, and I think that the point you made, Marshall, on an information base, you need to shout louder for that. There needs to be more demands for that, so that the whole issue of the importance of technology in the national agenda becomes not just a hip thing, but a real issue that we have to address.
Audrey Marks?
Services contribute 66% annually to GDP, and they're 66%.
66% to GDP.
Yeah, 66%. It should be an area of major emphasis. Yet, since 1999, we have had a 4.6% decrease from that sector. This is from, I see you're looking a little. This is from the information sheet here. That should be a major concern.
And those figures are from Statin, by the way.
Right. So we have to look at how can we improve this sector. what are the quick fixes? And I think we have to have an emphasis on basically creating jobs and small, especially small to medium-sized business. In the US, you have 3,000 business starting each day. Here in Jamaica, there's almost an anti-entrepreneurial spirit. And we have to get back where we put a focus on that it is good. So it is good to have entrepreneurism. And we need to, and we can do that. We have 2.5 million people also here. If we put a focus and say just 1% of this population, we are going to put measures in place to encourage that they get in business and start a small business. We will be looking at 25,000 small business starting. The average small business will employ between 10 to 20 to 50. If we say just an average of 25, you're looking at creating 625,000 jobs. I'm just saying that we need to put an emphasis on it. We have put emphasis on agriculture. We have put emphasis on a number of other things. We need to put an emphasis on creating small jobs.
Okay. Lorna Green, you're someone who has been a pioneer in this field. You've also just last night launched Women in Business, a new organization. And congratulations on the launch, by the way.
Thank you.
Is any of what Audrey is saying make sense in the future for and Mervyn, or there's simply just hyping as a lot of technology people usually hype, you know? You always hype.
Both, I will disregard the last comment, Claude.
All right.
But both of them I agree with. We have to, I'm listening to all of this, and one thing I am seeing happening, continuing to happen, is this disrespect for entrepreneurship. We need to teach people how to become business people, that there is respect in becoming a business person. Most of us are first generation business persons. We don't come from the legacy of knowing how to run and operate businesses. We need to take a real and practical approach to that. That's one. Secondly, in terms of, and I'll speak here not just to small businesses in general, but to the information technology sector. I agree, it's in somewhat of a shambles. We've had some black eyes, and we need to recover from that. But more than anything else, what you see here, most of the persons who are vocal in the IT industry at this point are actually traders. We're not really developing other businesses. And we need to move from the point where government is seeing itself as the entity to become the developers of businesses in IT, to getting the private sectors, developing entrepreneurship in the private sector to respect that IT can be an area that we can create jobs and wealth in this country. We need to go out and seek niches where we're going to develop, for instance, manufacturing plants, all various types of software development. We're focusing, there needs to be more entrepreneurial application to the development of this sector in Jamaica. It lacks a lot.
Okay. Can I ask Dr. Lloyd Cole? You have been talking a lot recently, Dr. Cole, about marrying technology and innovation and entrepreneurship. I think you have what you call a very big idea to get all of this together. Can you briefly outline that idea for our audience, Sandra?
Yes, I think, thank you very much. I think we really have to build on what we have, and all that the previous speakers have said are absolutely correct. But are we quite prepared to wait on 1% growth annually for the next God knows how long? Surely we need all that, but we need some innovation. Nothing big has happened in Jamaica yet. We need something innovative, big, and that appeals not only to us Jamaicans, but to the business world outside as well. I suggest that while the high-tech information thing does quite well and has a grand future, the shipping area is one that can transform Jamaica literally overnight. I refer in particular to Jamaica's strategic location in the great shipping lanes of Panama, the Panama Canal. We have ships passing by us daily, by the minute. Go up to Newcastle, look across the harbor and see what happens by the minute. The big liners, they run into problems from time to time. They need servicing. There's no mega service facility for the mega liners in this area. I suggest Jamaica is sitting straight in the eye of the Panama Canal, waiting for Jamaica to be the focus for such a project, a major dry dock coupled with a port around which can be built a mega industrial complex such as is built in Trinidad. Only we have the advantage of being in the eye of the Panama Canal. They have not. We can also, in addition to all of that, locate our port at a place like in Clarendon, near to Vernon Fields, and a mega port such as that will feed straight into the development project of Vernon Field. A mega port of the order I'm talking about will, of necessity, require railway services. The railway will come alive as a result, of necessity.
Okay.
I have such a project in the making, approved by government, and we're working hard at it.
All right. Dennis Morrison, from the perspective of development, how, I think that's part of your portfolio. I know you wear many hats in the government. How do you pull together all these ideas that we've been knocking around all evening?
Moderator, I want to agree with Lorna and to some extent Dr. Cole. Lorna's point about respect for entrepreneurship is absolutely essential. While I agree with Dr. Tufton that further work needs to be done to fix the macro picture, the business environment, and we've been talking about that. The fact of the matter is that production, whether of goods or services, gets done by enterprises. Yeah, we need enterprises and business people to adopt the most modern business practices. That, to my mind, has to be the priority in this phase of development of Jamaica. But
there are people who say the government is not business friendly. I mean, that's what Christopher Dupton was implying.
There's a whole raft of reform programs underway. And it would be good for some of these agencies doing these reforms to invite somebody like Chris to see actually what is being done. I heard yesterday a presentation about what has happened at the Customs Department, which I think is something that needs to be exposed to the public. That the high percentage of transactions which are done now online, over 80%. All right, so significant progress is being made there. The point I want to make, though, is that if we are going to move forward, it requires that business people are going to have to invest time and energy modernizing their business practices and investing their capital. Production is not going to get done by the state. The state can lay out frameworks, it can invest in infrastructure, as it is doing at the Port of Kingston, etc. But ultimately, it is business people who make production happen.
Okay.
Chairman.
We're now coming to the end of the program, Chris, and what I'm going to do now is starting from Paul Pennycook on that side and working back to you in the way we started the program to summarize in the same way what are the one or two main things that you want the people who have been watching and listening all evening, what it is that you want them to go with as the important key things, first of all, Paul, in the area of tourism.
In 2002, Mr. Moderator, we had 1.26 million visitors, stopover visitors to Jamaica, and 865,000 cruise visitors. If we take that up to 1.35 million stopover visitors and 1 million cruise visitors, we'll earn $2 billion from tourism. That is what I'd like to see happen for the 2003. We get those numbers up to that, and that's the level of earnings that we're talking about.
Okay. Carl James in agri-business.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the statistics that we have been provided with, one of the areas that shows constant growth is what they call processed foods, because they've been using Jamaican products to make branded products that are accepted on the international market. What has been happening is that we need to have more of our agri products converted into consumer products like jerk season, which has become an international brand. Other brands like that can be developed from almost every sector in the agricultural sector. And then we are also recommending that the particular sectors group themselves together, so the partnership not only with government and union, but in the particular sector, to take greater control of the distribution chain in their export market, because we need to control what happens to our products when they get there, so that we don't have pirates who start advertising jerk seasoning made in Montego Bay that only knows the name because of the tourist sector, but never been there. We need to control that, and we can do that very easily. The technology is not expensive. We just need to do what is being said. Entrepreneurs, pick up these areas, run with them.
Marshall Hall, you talked a lot earlier in the program, not a lot, but you talked about rural development, because both neither agriculture nor tourism can really function unless the rural part of Jamaica is stable and developing and growing. What do we need to do to make that happen?
The information base is major. You will not have a major agro-processed industry without the information on what is produced, when it is produced, where it is produced, what are the costs. Benchmark yourself against the best in the world. The best in the world. And if you're not doing as well as that, strive to do it. Quality, absolutely vital. And do what Paca says. Take a look at the world and find out what they want, and we can start producing it.
Okay. Anthony Chan.
Stop needing and start doing.
Stop?
Needing and start doing.
Yes. What are the things that you're going to want to do?
I just wanted to mention something quickly. What Dennis said, there's a lot of truth in it in terms of firms having to upgrade, but I think we have to bear in mind that the market is already forcing many firms to upgrade, to improve technology, etc. So the market is taking care of that. If you won't improve and you don't improve your technology, you won't survive. So the market is taking care of it. What we need to do is continue to create a pro-business environment. That is always key.
Mervyn.
Focus on cause, not effect, and I think that if it takes hype to get us there, then that's what we'll do. There are role models for us to follow. Ireland, a nation of similar size to us, did exactly what I'm suggesting we can do in a 10 to 15 year period. I do believe that we need to support the massive innovation that I see taking place today in the services sector. Support them, make it simpler for them, make it easier for them to grow, and build a knowledge pool and create an awareness for us to grow the technology sector.
Okay, Audrey. I'm being told that we have to move on.
Seems as if when you get over to this side, we're
No,
wrapping up. Okay.
Go ahead.
For the past 60 years, we have been electing our own leaders. And despite the good news here and there, the fact is that for most of the persons out there listening, they're having a hard time. We are 152% debt to GDP. We have an economic situation that is not stable. It is difficult to plan as an entrepreneur. It's difficult to invest. It's difficult to compete with a speculative market. We have to get to where we have known indicators. We need to know that the dollar, for example, is going to be 50 to 1. The interest rate is going to be 6%. Inflation rate is going to be X. We need to know what we're working with. Then we can really go after production. But to get there, it needs for persons, it needs for all the stakeholders to support the government in keeping to these targets instead of trying to break it down.
Christopher Tufton, you have the last word.
Yes, I'll say, Mr. Chairman, I might be a little more impatient than the rest of the panelists in the sense that I still believe we can achieve a lot more. The fact is, it's simple. Investments, we have to grow our way out of our problems. We have problems, and the only way is to grow. I agree with Dennis that entrepreneurial activity is critical to that process, but I would also like to reinforce the fact that the state, as a facilitator of that process, is also extremely critical. I spent time in Ireland, Mr. Chairman, looking at the Irish experience personally. I've spoken to all the development agencies, I've looked at what they have done, and if I were to identify the single most critical element of the Irish experience, it is the capacity of the state to, one, articulate a vision, and the courage and the leadership of that state to coordinate the activities among the different stakeholders to make that vision work. And I think that has been lacking in Jamaica, and that's where we need to go in terms of moving forward.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a look at the main sectors and their performance in the Jamaican economy. Our panel has offered a number of suggestions which they believe need to be carefully considered by the government, the business sector, indeed everyone, if we want to see continued growth. Good night from the CPTC.